Jodi Balma. Thank you all for being so patient. Luckily on Zoom, the 15-minute rule doesn't apply, and you all just patiently wait for me to arrive. So I want to talk to you about community college careers and answer any questions. Sarah's going to help me out with chat because I can't pay attention to both. And so if you've got a question, raise your hand and we can call on you. For people on phones, it is really distracting when the chat goes crazy. So we can do that at the end. So if you've got questions, just raise your hand. I'm happy to answer them. This presentation was recorded so that you can refer to it. I'm going to go a little bit fast because you have that as resources. Kristen, yeah.
Oh, hi, thank you so much for doing this. Can you apply to faculty or adjunct faculty positions without having completed your master's degree? Like,
So you can certainly start those conversations, but you wouldn't be able to get hired. Our human resources would not let you talk very long before they required that master's to be finished. But you could certainly start having those conversations, as I did, before graduation, to let people know that you're interested. And that's going to be one of the themes of my talk, is make sure that you let people know, your faculty mentors know, that you are interested in teaching. Not everyone is. And so we as professors tire of telling people what their opportunities are. And so let people know that. So just as background, and thank you, Kristen, because that's good to kind of have an idea of what people are thinking. I've been a political science professor at Fullerton College for 21 years. I got to update that number. I'm also the coordinator of the honors program there at Fullerton College, and I started as an adjunct 26 years ago at Cal State Fullerton, and I started those conversations as a grad student, talking to my mentors, talking to faculty, and my idea was that I couldn't possibly teach at Cal State Fullerton because you needed to have a PhD, a doctorate finished, and learned that there are some opportunities for people with masters at lower level, at a lower division courses. So that's also something we'll be talking about today, is that you're not simply limited to the community college, but that's what I'm going to be talking about mostly, because that's what I know. So think about your skill set when you're thinking about what you want to do, and particularly at the community college, we are looking for great teachers. The CSUs, the UCs, R1 schools, if you're going on to get a doctorate and you want to be a researcher, you want to be a writer, that's a different skill set than somebody who wants to teach. And so the community college, both for part-time or adjunct and for full-time, we're going to be looking for the skill set of somebody who really wants to teach, really wants to mentor, really wants to do service, both in the community, in your field, as well as on the campus. That's what we're looking for when we're hiring full-time. For somebody who's just going to teach part-time or an adjunct, we're looking for people who are going to teach and mentor our students. I'm going to talk from political science perspective. We're looking in my department for people who can teach political science 100. That is the bread and butter of our department. If you're, teaching math, it might be a math 100 or a college algebra class. If it's intro to theater or intro to music, that's a general ed class. Think about what are the classes that the most number of students have to take. And that's the class you would concentrate on selling yourself, marketing yourself as a good candidate to teach. So for political science, it's American government. That's what I need to hire. That's what I've got to get people in the door. That's where students have to take it to transfer. Opportunity. It's really about getting the experience. And this is, of course, the double-edged problem we always have of, you got to have experience to get the job, but how do you get the job without the experience? And so that's where some of the opportunities that you have, like tonight, being a TA, Cal State Fullerton, my alma mater that you are all attending, has an incredible program to be teaching assistants, to get that experience, even if it is just sitting down with your mentors in your department and talking to them about the opportunities, about their contacts, about who they know, who might be at a community college. that really can help you get in the door. And then this website that I want to show you, which is the California Community College, that's what those 3 C's stand for, California Community College Registry. And when we go to that, it is an incredible resource. And Sarah, if you would be so kind as to throw cccregistry.org in the chat, they can all go to it on their own. But this is a great resource. There are 116 community colleges in California, and we are all different and we all have our own districts, but we all publish our jobs here. Now, I will caution you that not every job is published. Sometimes we will hire adjuncts without publishing, because if I publish my need for one person to teach one American government class in the fall, I might get 500 applicants, because this registry is going to go out to everybody in the entire state. So not everything will be. My dog's going to bark like crazy because there's somebody, probably Amazon, that's the only person who visits us, but just ignore the dog. So what you can do is do a search for a job, and you can do by district or by region. We're going to do by region, because I assume you probably don't want to relocate for one job that pays you $4,000 for half a year. So you go here and it's by region, and it's any time it's been posted. And keywords, you're going to look at faculty, and my keywords would be political science, because you're looking for that. And then any of these districts in Southern California are going to come up. And so you find you could apply for San Bernardino, Rancho Cucamonga, San Marcos, Victorville, Chula Vista, all of these, Bakersfield. Some of these don't count as Southern California in my mind, but that's how they divide the state, Imperial. And so if you click on one of them, these are all part-time jobs. And you can start to see what they're looking for. And I would encourage you to do that now. Look at what those positions are looking for so that you can start to build it. And here, a master's in political science, government or international relations, or a bachelor's in any of those areas, and a master's in econ, history, public administration, social science. So sometimes a law degree, if you have a JD, sometimes you can kind of get an idea of what districts are looking for. So you can play around with that all day long, which is fun. And you can also sign up to be notified. And so they have, you can register with them way up there. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to switch back, but I'll get my PowerPoint up and share my screen and do this. And now we're back. Okay, so that is, I'll just do this. So this is the registry, and you can see that and you can register. I would definitely do that. Definitely sign up. You can play around to look at what some of those other related fields might be for your discipline. But you start to see the difference between a full-time, and that is going to be a whole different process. And so you want to start looking ahead if you're thinking about a full-time position and what that looks like. We have at the North Orange County Community College District a future instructor training program, and it is set up to help people get these jobs. And so you can go to our North Orange County Community College District, NOCCCD, .edu, and see this future teacher program. We usually start in the fall, so now's a good time to start getting used to that. And you can take a look if you want to screenshot. Romilly Pereira is somebody that is involved with that, and you can also just go directly on to see. But we often do workshops, and we're not the only district doing that. And so take a look at other districts if you live further away and you want to, get a job at Irvine Valley or out in Riverside. Look at the districts. There's many, 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 many community college districts. There are 4 community college districts just in Orange County, and then one huge one in Los Angeles with 9 campuses. And so you want to look at those district offerings from human resources. So we don't have a human resources office at Fullerton College or Cypress College. We have one for the entire district. This obviously is dated, but we have these often in February or March, these hire me workshops. So now's kind of a good time to be looking ahead to see what's happening. So let's start with adjunct positions. So adjunct positions, the hardest part is getting hired, that first job. And so taking a look at your relationships and your contacts at Cal State Fullerton, seeing if you can get a TA position there, some teaching experience there, and then just applying for the adjunct positions. Sometimes the future teacher program would give you a relationship with that school that would help you get to know them. And then it's just a matter of applying. We call, and this is obviously pre-COVID, freeway flyers, the idea that if you are trying to build a career out of adjunct, if you don't have a job somewhere else and you're just trying to pay the bills by teaching, you often, almost always, would have to teach at multiple colleges or multiple districts. And so we call those freeway flyers. I assume most of them became Zoomers at all those different colleges in the last 2 years. But as we transition back to campus, a lot of the faculty who will be teaching on campus will be adjuncts. And so that commute will add to that. If you're just looking to add 1 or 2 classes, you can do that at a single college and kind of get those relationships. The pay, take a look at that. Take a look at what the pay is. I honestly can't tell you what the current pay is, but sometimes CSU pays more for adjuncts than the CSU, than the community colleges. And so you want to take a look at that. What you will discover fairly quickly is that the people who are hiring you are not the people processing your paperwork. And so we honestly do not have any idea how much we pay. And so you want to go to human resources. It's all public information. It's available on the registry. Just you need to further look and see if it's $70 an hour, which seems like an amazing amount of money. What are they counting the hours? Is it just the 3 hours that you're actually teaching a class? Because that ends up not being so great. Some districts will pay for an office hour a week. Some will not. And no one will pay for the tremendous number of hours you will spend prepping for a class. No one will pay you for the grading that you're doing. It is the exploitation of adjunct labor that is just the reality. So do not think that $70 an hour would equal the mathematical equation that we look at for full-time work, which is $70 an hour makes double that, $140,000 a year. You will not be making that working as an adjunct, even if you taught a full load of classes. Resume building. What you're looking at as an adjunct is building. If your goal is to teach full-time, if your goal is to get hired as a full-time professor, wherever it is that you want to get hired, you're looking to distinguish yourself. Everyone is going to have experience teaching. We do not, the exploitation of adjunct labor means that we do not hire anybody who hasn't taught somewhere. We're not going to hire somebody who is fresh off a doctoral program to be a full-time teacher at Fullerton College or any of the community colleges. We want to know that you have experience teaching, that you love teaching, that your students really what you're teaching really resonates with them, that you enjoy the work, that you're good at it. So then you have to build your resume beyond that. What else can I do? What else can I do on campus? What else can I do in my community? What else can I do in my field that makes me stand out from everybody else who has teaching experience? So any questions about this? This is kind of a good place to take some questions and see if you have questions about being an adjunct, getting that first job.
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Caesar had a question in the chat, and he had a question. Yes. Do you have to teach at different districts because you can't teach at 2 colleges in the same district? Can you teach at 2 colleges?
So, a little bit. So you can teach 1 class for us at Fullerton and 1 class at Cypress. But if the district says you can't teach more than 4 classes, then that's combined. And so sometimes the district will say only 3 classes. It depends on the district what the rules are, but that's going to be a district rule because they are the ones paying you. So they know you're working at 2 colleges. So often, if you need 5 classes to pay your bills, you would have to teach at 2 different districts. Ideally, you wouldn't teach at 5 different districts just for sanity. particularly when it comes to when your spring break is. So lots of our adjuncts, and I encourage our adjuncts to teach at Cal State Fullerton because it's just physically closer geographically. A lot of our students at Fullerton College transfer to Cal State Fullerton. I love my colleagues at Cal State Fullerton, and so we like to share incredible, wonderful talent. But I also will try to do that. We at Fullerton College do not have any full-time positions coming in the next, I don't know how many years. When I got hired in the year 2000, the next time we hired was 2019. So 19 years between my hire and the next hire. I was very intentional in the adjuncts that we hired, knowing that we would not have a full-time job to offer them. I really tried to get them jobs at other districts where they might have a better chance of getting hired full-time. And they have. They have gotten those jobs. But especially when you're working at a district where you know that department is just not going to hire, you do want to position yourself to teach somewhere where that is possible. Taylor, and then I think there was another hand.
Yeah, I had a question.
Okay, Martha, and then we'll go with Taylor.
So for the adjuncts, those are basically people that are in the teaching field, but they're not, they don't have tenure, just to make sure that's correct.
It's not a full-time job. There's no job security. It is it is really basically our part-time teaching force that teaches 58% of all classes at community college.
Got it. And you had mentioned that it would be very unlikely to make like 100 and something K a year. Yeah. Even if you pick up multiple part-time jobs. So does that mean that basically professors that have tenure make more? Is that what it is? Their salary is higher?
Yeah, the salaries of full-time professors are higher.
Got it. Okay. And it could take a few years to get tenure?
Well, so that's two different questions. As an adjunct, you would never be eligible for tenure. It is a totally different job classification. You getting hired for part-time teaching is exactly that. We are hiring you to teach this class and this class only, and we may hire you next semester. Likely we would, but it is no guarantee. You don't have a contract with our district, and there is no possibility of getting tenure if you are hired as an adjunct. When positions come available, we advertise them as full-time. And if you spend a little time on CCC registry, you'll see that there's a very clear distinction between part-time and full-time. Full-time positions, if we hired someone who had been an adjunct, and almost certainly we would be hiring somebody who had teaching experience as an adjunct somewhere, that would then be a totally different position. So getting a job full-time teaching as a community college professor is a completely different classification. The same way some of the faculty at Cal State Fullerton teaching lower division classes in undergrad, there's a large number of adjunct faculty who don't have full-time positions. Now, you as a student likely have no idea, but that's the reality for much of our lower division classes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. Yeah, it's a big clarification that needs to happen. And sometimes we just keep talking as if they're the same thing. So I appreciate the question. Taylor.
Hi, thank you. So my question is it possible for an adjunct professor or a full-time, either or, to teach in multiple disciplines or to teach classes across disciplines? Like if they had 2 master's degrees in 2 different disciplines, maybe related, would they be able to teach in both?
Yes, and so that's a great question. You're still going to hit the cap. If the district says you can only teach 3 classes, you're going to only be able to teach 3 classes no matter what departments or colleges you're teaching at. But certainly, especially if you have interdisciplinary or 2 different masters. And so we have had an adjunct in our department who has a history degree and a political science degree. And so she teaches both in our history department and our political science department.
A couple
Great.
of questions.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Sure.
A couple of questions in the chat for you. Does teaching in K through 12 count as experience for community college positions?
So it should. It's the hardest teaching I've ever done was volunteering in my daughter's kindergarten class. I needed a nap and a drink. It should and it doesn't, and that is a bias that college professors have, that teaching college is some elevated elitist idea, and that K through 12 is something else. So I will share with you that we do have that bias, and it is a prejudice that, you know, is not grounded in reality in any way, but it won't count.
So I have a quick question, because that was my question.
Yeah.
So the K through 12 doesn't count. Does it matter if you're credentialed?
It doesn't matter. And here's where the prejudice really falls apart and becomes laughable. While K through 12 teachers have to go through a credential program that teaches you how to teach, we don't.
Yeah.
Which is why Cal State Fullerton started a TA program, which is why we have the Future Teacher program, because we really do need to learn how to teach. And so that is something kind of that we're trying to supplement in a system that really was born out of, you know, the patriarchal idea that you go to school forever and then it doesn't matter if you know how to teach. The students will just fail out if they don't know how to learn from whatever font of knowledge stands, you know, as the sage on the stage. We, the next generation that says maybe we should actually teach people things, and there is a pedagogy and a whole discipline of education that is important, but that bias still exists. Now, having said that, I will say that one of my best adjuncts that I'm trying desperately to get a full-time job because he's brilliant and wonderful is a high school teacher, and his experience, his you know, command of that classroom 100% comes from him teaching the high school. So even though there will be a bias that you won't get credit for that, the experience that you bring with you is undeniable.
Thank you.
Another question in the chat
Yes.
is, as a result of the pandemic, there has been a teacher shortage in K through 12. Is this the case with community colleges?
So no, we have had the opposite. We have had an enrollment cliff combined with a pandemic. And so we have been hemorrhaging enrollment. Part of that is because the community college population was able to get jobs and raises. So they left us. Another reason is simply because not all of us did a super great job transitioning to remote, and students said, yeah, we'll come back later or not. And so the transition to remote was very bumpy for a lot of faculty. I've been teaching online for 17 years. I transitioned really easily and took my students along in the lifeboat with me, but some of my colleagues really struggled with that transition. And depending on the subject they were teaching also, there are some subjects that just translate so much better to online than others. And, you know, I can't imagine cosmetology or mortuary science. I don't know how you learn to embalm someone on Zoom, but that's kind of the reality. So we are looking not only at the pandemic cutting enrollment, but also, you know, 18 years ago was not a great time for birth rates. And so as people had fewer children or had children later, or tried to buy a house in Orange County and did not, the affordable housing crisis is definitely hitting the community colleges as well. So all of those kind of factors combine to mean that Fullerton College lost 30% of our students. And so we're hoping that in fall, when the high school students that were on campus are graduating and want to take on-campus classes, that will start to rebuild that. But it will be years and years and years before we're ever back up to 25,000 students at our campus. We're probably looking at 18,000, and so many programs will not be hiring nearly as robustly. That being said, there is a churn factor in adjuncts that many adjuncts tire of the exploitation and leave. And so we're always hiring. And that's not, a positive adjective that I'm using. I want to be honest with you. And some of you will be, successful in finding that niche, and some of you will absolutely find a department where they are aging and going to retire, and there are opportunities. When you study the aggregate numbers, it can look bleak, and you have to understand how to find the positive, and there are always opportunities in there. So I don't want to sugarcoat it and tell you that everything is rosy and we're hiring like crazy. We're not. But we always hire adjuncts, and we always have retirements that have to be replaced. Depending on your discipline will have a big impact on where those opportunities would be. And I'm happy to kind of spitball. I don't know everything about welding, and I don't know everything about, every department, but I can certainly give you some idea of, the colleges around us that would be good to look at. So.
Another question is, will working as a TA, a teaching assistant, help me land a job at a community college?
Yeah, so working as a TA while you are in grad school is the best way to get experience, because then you're not applying to be a part-time teacher without any experience. Everybody has to get their experience somewhere. So if you don't have the opportunity to teach TA, I did not. That was not a program they had. I had a wonderful chair of the political science program who took a chance on me, and we continue to do that. I hire people without any experience every single time I hire, simply because that was my story, and I want to give that chance to somebody else. But yeah, it just depends. But being a TA is never a bad idea. First, it gives you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, even though you've been students for your entire lives. Teaching is a very different job than it looks like when you are a student. And so getting to talk to your faculty mentor, getting to work with them, they will kind of share some of that behind the scenes part of the job, and you will get a good idea whether or not it's a good fit for you. Again, a lot of this is about fit. A lot of this is about your skill set. A lot of this is making sure that you are the round peg going into the round hole. And if you are somebody who doesn't like this age group, if you don't like college students, if you don't like talking, if you don't like being, a public speaker, this is not the job for you. And there are lots of jobs in academia that would be a better fit. Going to an R1 research institute, working for a think tank, those are jobs that are not my skill set. I don't want to be in a spreadsheet, and I don't want to be doing, regressive analysis. That's not where my skill set is, but you do want to kind of try that on. Other questions? And then I'll go back to my presentation and there's lots of time for other questions after, but.
Yeah. Is experience abroad considered valid work experience for a US citizen?
So I need a little more information about that. And so Kristen, if you want to ask, but basically, if it's work experience because you lived in another country, maybe. If it's work experience because you were working in the field, if you were on an archaeology dig, and you want to teach archaeology, 100% international experience is going to count. If it's just that you were a barista in an Italian gelato shop, maybe not, but I'd love to, have you make me coffee or gelato.
No, it's, no, I'm looking to be an ESL teacher, and I taught English abroad.
That 100% counts.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sometimes it gets work abroad gets invalidated. So
and some of this, and let me kind of put a big spotlight on this. Some of it is how you market your experience. So there might be a bias or a discounting of K through 12 experience, or a bias that international work is not the same because we don't always know how to, equivalate that. Some of it is just how you market it. And damn it, own your story. And it is a positive experience, and you do bring something that somebody else doesn't. And You get to believe in yourself to make other people believe in you. And often we will take that and say, that is a really positive thing. Even though it might not be on our minimum qualifications, or even though it might not be something that we've actually said is a desired qualification, that cover letter that you write is how you tell your story. And so you want to sell yourself. And for those of you who are non-white cisgendered men who have been socialized to brag about yourself your entire life, if you fit any other category, let me tell you, you got to brag about yourself. You need to own your experiences, you need to share your experiences, and you need to frame your experiences. All too often, I have to counsel my students of color and my female students that they should take 100% ownership of their experiences and why those are valuable. And even if they don't fit the narrative of the scholarship or the application, that they can turn that story into a positive. And I think it's something we all need to be reminded of. And if that speaks to you as a cisgendered white guy, awesome. Brag about yourself too. We just don't often socialize everybody the same and get that same message. So you get to own your story. Hilda.
Hi, I was wondering, I'm actually doing my master's in history, and just looking through job opportunities in community college, I've actually realized that a lot of the positions filled are filled by PhD professors. Would that have, like, me being a master's, not really PhD, would that
be like that is going to be, so that is not that's not a systemic bias. That is a department by department bias. So the department at Fullerton College, they are all the full-time faculty teaching history at Fullerton College are all PhDs. And so they have a bias towards PhDs. That doesn't mean they won't hire somebody who has a master's to teach as an adjunct. So get your foot in the door, teach as an adjunct, and then ask them where their colleagues and friends teach where that bias isn't as prevalent. Because we're not going to be hiring anybody full-time at Fullerton College anyway, because they're relatively young and they just hired. And so some of it you can kind of gauge that way. And there is almost a freedom in knowing that you're not going to get hired full-time at Fullerton College to then ask them to use their contacts to get you hired somewhere else, because they're going to be doing your evaluations. They're going to see you in the classroom. You're going to get to prove live that you should be their colleague, and they don't have a spot to give you. And so how do they then help you join the academy and become a full-time professor somewhere else? And the way to do that, and I gotta emphasize this again and again, you have to tell people that's what your goal is. You have to tell your faculty at Fullerton College, when you get hired, you have to tell your faculty mentors now at Cal State Fullerton that that is the goal. You have to be upfront in asking for help, because otherwise no one will know that's what you want. So yes, that is a bias, and it's department by department. I do not have a doctorate. I was going to go to Claremont Graduate University because that's where everybody who wants a doctorate after they're already finished goes, because they let you go part-time. It's insanely expensive. I went so that my application for the full-time job would say I was in a doctoral program. And then I got the job and I quit because it would have taken 27 years to pay it off. Because the difference between having a bunch of units after your master's and having the PhD is $3,000 a year. And so I quit. So, I'm not entirely sure that was 100% ethical, because I knew I had no intention of finishing, but they hired me and I got past their bias. And now when I'm on the hiring committee, we don't have that bias. We hire people because they're great at their jobs. Other departments will have that bias. Now, that being said, there are other departments where our sociology department at Fullerton College, nobody has a PhD. And so they're not going to hire somebody with a PhD because they don't want to feel bad about the fact that they don't have a PhD. And so their bias is the opposite. So that's just the reality of the ecosystem that becomes a department. Martha, next question.
I graduated this semester, but I've never done an internship and I don't have almost anything on my CV, but I have something on my resume. Will that affect me negatively?
I don't know. What's your department?
English and comparative literature.
Awesome. We need so many English teachers.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Math and English, they always need adjuncts. So it's less, I don't want to say competitive because they're still competitive, but it's less of a barrier. So check out the Future Teacher Program. That might be a good way to start. You would get to know a department. They would get to know you often. And one of the reasons, well, no one works for HR, right? I'm going to admit something that isn't entirely above board. When I post an adjunct position at the CCC registry, I will get 600 applicants for one job for one class. And so I don't do that. I call Sarah Hill and I say, who do you have who's awesome, who you know would be great in the classroom? And then I hire them. And if Sarah's wrong, which she never has been before because she's amazing, and the students at Cal State Fullerton are amazing, but if she was wrong, I just wouldn't hire them back the next semester. It's one class. It's just so much easier. And I feel like Cal State Fullerton doesn't have the USC branding and the UCLA branding that some of the other schools do on a regular basis. And so I'm just going to have a little CSUF pipeline for my adjuncts, and it's worked out great. And often they already have been teaching at Cal State Fullerton, or what I love is Sarah recommends them to me, I hire them, and then they get hired at Cal State Fullerton because they already got hired for Fullerton College. Win-win. So it's just about using that system, using that connection. And you know, when I was little, I was discouraged by hearing, you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's not, you don't have to be a Kennedy or a Kardashian. It's using the connections that you have to your benefit. I was not the top student in my graduate program. And I was working full time and I was going, but I was like, I really think I would be good at this teaching thing. I really want to teach. And so I met with the chair. I made an appointment for his office hours. He had been I'd taken his class before, and I just sat down and I said, you know, how, and it didn't occur to me that Cal State Fullerton was even an option. And I said, who do you know at Fullerton College? How do I get that connection? What do I do here? And he offered me an interview, and he said, come in next week, interview, you know, we're hiring for the fall. And I did, and I followed up and I did everything right. And I talked to every mentor I had, and I got the job as an adjunct. And a bunch of my classmates were shocked when I said at graduation that I'd been hired to teach. And I think they went to the chair and were like, why'd you hire her and not me? And he said, she asked. And that's a really important lesson, that he wasn't going to offer that to all 30 of us who are graduating. He offered it to the person who asked. And so ask for those opportunities. The worst he could have said is no. The worst he could have said is, I don't know anybody at Fullerton College, get out of my office. Okay. I would have just driven down to Fullerton College and sat in the quad and talked to, I don't know, I would have done something else. But I think that it's really important when students come to my office hours and say, you know, what about internships? And I say, like, well, I'm going to give you the opportunity because you came and asked. I'm not going to bore the 400 other people that I'm teaching this semester with opportunities that they don't want. So ask for those opportunities, let people know, signal to them that you're interested, talk to your faculty in your department, and ask who they know, ask who their connections are. LinkedIn is kind of great for this, but it's still an informal system in academia. It's really making those connections. And I know that's hard during COVID. I know that's hard with this, but a lot of professors have Zoom office hours and they are just sitting there all by themselves. Go see them, go talk to them, go ask, and just see. The worst they can say is no. And you get a vibe from faculty of who wants to have those conversations. Again, that's something I'm looking for. I want adjuncts. I want professors who want to mentor. I want them to sit in their office hours and want to talk to students. So find those people.
A couple questions in the chat.
Yeah.
One is from Mariana, is going to be graduating with a master's degree in education with a concentration of higher education. So it's student affairs.
Yeah.
Is there anything that she could teach in the community at the community college with that degree?
So it might be better. It might be better to look for student affairs jobs. What would you want to teach, I guess, is the question. And the reason my immediate is to say get a job in student affairs is because those jobs come with benefits, like you get dental. And those jobs are hiring. Again, on the CCC registry, you can register for all of those jobs that you've been prepared for. So there might be a job in education departments, you know, but also check and see at the Cal States. That might be an education lower division class that you might be able to teach. I can't think of anything off the top of my head for higher ed at the community colleges. But student affairs jobs are amazing, and we are definitely hiring in that department.
Okay, another question is, if my field of study is multidisciplinary, how do I choose what department to apply to?
Apply to everything you qualify for. Yeah. And again, you're looking for that entry-level class. And so if you had experience teaching, if you had better connections in that department, you might want to start there. But I would apply for everything. There's no quote on how many you can apply for. Yeah. Okay, so let me go back to the slide. And again, we can have another session like this as things come up. Let me do this and then here. So let's talk about applications. When you're actually applying, you need to spend some time on your application, whether it's for an adjunct position, definitely for a full-time position, but personalize it. We want you to love us. Even though we know in the back of our heads that you are probably applying to every open position, we want you to propose. We want you to love us. We want you to say that you only want to teach at Fullerton College. And we don't really care what the end of that statement is, but whatever it is, if you were a student at a community college, if you have a passion for teaching community college students, if you know community college students who had an incredible experience and you want to be that faculty, personalize it. Spend some time on our website. Look up our demographics, look up our history, spend some time, drive to campus and spend some time there and get a feel for the culture. Personalize it. I know it's not fair, but we have the control, and so you have to love us. Do not send a template that just is, I want to, my goal is to teach at any community college who will hire me. Even for full-time positions, I have seen those letters, and I know in my heart it is not their fault, because their cover letter is being saved as for every job they're applying for. But wow, if you tell me you really want to teach at Colorado State University when you're applying to my job, I like you less. And I try to get over that bias, but just don't set yourself up for that. Just don't have that barrier. Do some research. Again, look at the salary and benefits, make sure it's a job you want, because again, the people that you talk to about the opportunity may not even know the human resources side of things. It's all public information. Those salary schedules are published. Look at the course offerings, particularly if you can teach something other than that entry-level course. So if you can teach comparative government, list that, but don't sell that. And here's why. I've got a full-time faculty member who teaches comparative, and he doesn't want the competition. So just list that you have other skills, other classes that you could teach, but really understand what those offerings are going to be. Don't say that you have a specialty in political philosophy if that's not something we offer. And again, it all depends on your department, your discipline. Look at those desired qualifications. Usually job postings will have 2 sections. Minimum qualifications, you got to have that to get in the door, but everyone is going to have that. And so you want to look at the further down the job posting at desired qualifications. What are we looking for? We want somebody with some teaching experience. We want somebody with passion for teaching, those kinds of things. And in that cover letter that you often will upload on the online portal, you have the opportunity to personalize it. You have the opportunity to sell yourself. So do that, sell yourself. Every college in America will have a diversity question. Take it seriously. This is scored. It's how I get to interview people. And you would be surprised. I served on a president hiring committee, and those folks should be able to write this in their sleep, and they botched it 6 ways to Sunday. And they didn't, I guess I'm just supposed to give them credit for working in the community college system for 25 years, but they did not write about the diversity question. They didn't talk about the students that we serve. And, you know, there's grades, right? You can fail this and you won't get an interview. You can do a fine job and get a C where you give buzzword bingo about diversity and use all of the terms that are currently in the zeitgeist. You can talk personally about your experiences and get a B, and really talk about the programs that you've been a part of, your experiences as a student or as a faculty member. And then what I really am looking for is somebody who takes this question seriously, is really thoughtful about it, does all of those other things, but also is really specific about how diversity is a positive thing, not just something that we have to do, not just something that we're asking you to fill out, but the diversity of the classroom, the diversity of a college campus, the different kinds of diversity. And one of the things I love about the community college system is that we do have organic diversity from, you know, I just taught a class 2 years ago where I had a special admit student who was 12 years old taking a class as a K through 12 student, brilliant kid who's now at UCLA living in a dorm room with 2 other 16-year-olds. But he was in the class, and my oldest graduate was a 75-year-old. And he had been a veteran and he'd had to leave college. And finally, when his kids and grandkids were all done with college, he decided to come back. And he was incredible. And the diversity of that classroom, of these perspectives, of people from all different walks of life, of all different ideologies and experiences and lifestyles, that was a magical classroom. And so talk about those kinds of experiences where you can tell a story about diversity and what it means to you that goes beyond just a checklist, because those are the stories that really resonate with people. That's what we're looking for when we ask it. And so many people just either don't take it seriously when they see it or think that they have all this experience. One last story on this. I had a professor, and if you make me hunt for things, I get annoyed. It's just like why you don't want to turn in a paper back when you got to pick fonts before Canvas gave you all the font choices. But you didn't want to pick, 8-point font that was curly Q. Don't annoy your teachers. Like, why would you piss me off just as I'm putting a grade on your paper? The same thing when you're applying. I know we make you type in your resume and answer the same questions. That's the cost of this application system. Do it, make it easy. I would put things in bold. Every desired qualification would be a bold subheading so that when you're going through and scoring, do I deserve an interview? You betcha I'm not going to make you hunt for my desired qualifications. And I'm going to say it twice. Make it easy. I had a professor who was an African-American professor who taught at Howard University, clearly a historically Black college. He biffed the diversity question. I know he has diversity experience. I know he has a passion for diversity. He didn't tell me it, and I couldn't score him. I can't make up things for you. So make it easy for me to find. Don't assume I know anything. and just write it as many times as you need to in as many places as we ask you to, because the easier you make it, the more I like you before I even meet you. The interview. This is for a full-time job. It's very different for a part-time job. It will determine, but a full-time job, when I'm on a full-time hiring committee for a full-time professor, it's 1 hour. This is very different from the Cal States and the UCs, where they will have a very different screening process. So I'm going to take, let's see, my 2019 experience for political science in my department, there were 170 applicants, and we narrowed that down through their applications, their answer to diversity question, their desired qualifications, their teaching experience, and we interviewed 10 people over 2 days. And we had 1 hour of questions. We had them do a writing assignment, take that seriously, it does matter. And then a teaching demo, 20-minute teaching demo. And so that's it. To make a decision where I'm offering somebody a full-time job and recommending them to the president, who will make the decision about who to hire, I am meeting with 10 people and about an hour and a half each. So it is really important that you shine. It's really important that you answer those questions. It's really important that you proofread. Kid you not, a guy who was interviewing for a presidential position just had horrific spelling, and we gave him a computer with spell check, and he was offended that we had asked him to write anything because he'd always had secretaries. And secretary isn't a word we use anymore. And so the idea that he was still using that did not sit well with the administrative assistant, who would be his assistant, of like, I'm not hiring you for $250,000 a year, and I have to spell words for you. So proofread, use that grammar check. What I'm looking for really, because almost everybody uses grammar check, what I'm looking for in that written portion is for your writing style, your personality to shine through. Often that written portion for me will be an email to students. I want to see how you talk. I want to see your level of formality. I want to see kind of that written communication, because it's so much of what we do in Canvas and announcements and email. That matters to me, how you communicate. The teaching demo, I'm looking for content. I'm looking for interesting. I'm looking for innovative ways to teach. I'm looking for your style, your teaching style. It is absolutely awkward, and we all admit that it's awkward because you're teaching faculty, but we're having you pretend that you're teaching students. Embrace the meta. If you like to interact, if you like to have communication, do that. Just know that we probably can't talk back, but we want to. But that kind of is our style. For Cal State, you know, they usually do phone interviews or some screening process and get it down to 2 or 3 people. You're spending all day with them. If you get that kind of opportunity, let me just caution you, you are never not interviewed. From the student that gives you a tour to the staff assistant who is emailing you your parking permit, you be kind, you be gracious, you be professional, because one of my colleagues actually used to be the grad student who picked the candidates up from the airport. And she said that she was the reason a bunch of people didn't get the job, because they were on their phones after the interview, bad mouthing the people that they had just interviewed with. And she's like, do you not understand my job is to report back everything you just said on the phone? And they didn't get hired. So just understand, the entire time you're on campus, you are being interviewed. Everyone you interact with is part of the process. You are, just pretend like there's a camera on. So once we do that, once we take 10 people and we interview them for an hour and a half, we're asking questions in that Q&A that really are about content, but also about pedagogy. We're looking for, how do you teach? We're asking you what your commitment to the student is beyond the classroom. And we need to make sure you know the content. We need to make sure you are able to explain what you know to a classroom and to us. And then we take 3, sometimes 4 if we have a really great pool, and send those to a second interview with our president, our vice president of instruction, and our dean. The difference between a community college is we have coordinators, not chairs, because our departments are much smaller. And so the manager is the dean, not the chair of the department. And so that dean of social science, or that dean of humanities, or that dean of engineering, or that dean of fine arts, that dean is going to be your supervisor, your manager, and then the vice president of instruction and the president meet with them. And then after the second interview, that team and the original team meet in a conference room, and we negotiate and we talk about who we think was best, who they think was best, and then somebody gets offered the job. So let me stop sharing and answer some more questions.